And we're live. Hello and welcome back to New Comic Book Day Book Club. The daily, not so much,
No,
weekly,
never was.
no, not really that either. Monthly show looking at new comic books that have been dropping and giving Alec here, White Whale Comics, and I the chance to discuss some of the highlights, lowlights, meh lights of the month. If you've been watching lately, the last few months, we've been bouncing back and forth between each other's channels and sort of taking the opportunity to celebrate some of the reads from the last month. We got some great indies to discuss tonight. It's kind of a Jeff Lemire festival for the first half of the
Yeah,
show,
he just writes every book now.
and I'm okay with that. We're also going to try
Um,
to shoehorn a little Cliff Chang in there, and if possible, a little bit of righteous thirst for vengeance if it fits.
I also want to point out that we've gotten so away from the plot of this show that it's not even New Comic Book Day anymore.
No, it's not. It's like it's a Monday. It's
It's
just
like, yeah,
Monday.
we'll just do it whenever because it doesn't matter and everything's chaos and
Yeah, right. Time is a flat circle, right?
yeah, and some days, Mondays, well, I mean, books come out on Tuesdays now, so who the hell knows?
This is
Every
true.
day,
This is
every
true.
day's Comic Book Day.
Say hello to some friends in the chat. We got Ruben Guzman, the White Tiger himself. We got Nicholas, who was chiding me because I was in the No Good Comics chat. This is a show I can actually get on, so I'm glad to be here and get on and talk with all of you. Old Wolf, the guy who was sitting in Justin's show for so long, I couldn't. He was holding me back. He was texting me. He was like, "Hey, you should join the show," and I was like, "How? You're still on the show? Like, I can't give me your seat." Oh, brother comics, what's up? Good to see you, Perry. Dropping my daughter's favorite emoji in the chat. We got Roscoe. He made it onto Justin's show. I don't know how he did it. That's amazing. He conned somebody. He says, I heard Old Wolf got kicked off Justin's panel and was trying to get in John's now. Not going to happen. I know better than to send him the link. I will say this bottle was full when I was waiting backstage for Justin's show to start. No,
I don't believe you.
that's a prop. Let's see here. Gorvidal, good evening. The guy who truly appreciates the book club format. We're here for you, sir, among many others, but we're here for you. We're going to kick off with our Justin Lemire breakdown of
Justin Lemire?
Jeff Lemire, Fred Lemire, Bill Lemire. This
Bill
is
Lambier.
This is May's book, Jeff Lemire's written and drawn new series from Dark Horse. They've had 2 issues come out. I will say, as heart-wrenching as the topic is, I've still been actually able to enjoy, I guess you could put in quotes, May's book. What were your thoughts on these first 2 issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you can say you enjoy a story without enjoying the subject matter. Certainly, it is a tough subject for those of you who this might be your first book club, possibly because we don't do it ever anymore. So to let you guys know up front, it is a full spoiler show. So if you haven't read any of these books and you're concerned about spoilers, please read them and then tune in on the replay. Having said that, this story is about the main character, who's kind of the narrator and the basically the sole focus of the book. He lost his daughter to some sort of disease, I would imagine, considering the circumstance. It's all very vague,
Yes.
which led to his marriage falling apart, and now he is kind of just this shell of a person kind of going through the motions of his life until he receives a phone call in the middle of the night from an unknown number that sounds like it's his daughter's voice. And she says, "I'm stuck in the center," which is kind of how the first issue ends. The second issue is then him trying to talk to his ex-wife about it, and she thinks he's just crazy. And it turns out that she was kind of a savant at doing mazes.
The daughter.
The daughter, yes, not the wife. Sorry. And so it's kind of his journey into finding out what this center is that she's talking about. And he's following like these literal and figurative threads, because there's this whole kind of metaphor with a sweater that she wore and the threads of the sweater. And most of it's in black and white, but there are like moments of color, and it was, classic Jeff Lemire heartstrings, semi-realism storyline that, like, I think is really what he does best, or at least it's what I like the best of the stuff that he does.
Sure.
Not to take away from any of his more fantastical stuff, because obviously I love Descender, and a lot of his other stuff, but a lot of his superhero stuff never really connected with me the same way that his stories like more like this connect with me. So
Kyle,
it's really beautifully done, and like I know some people probably aren't the biggest fan of his artwork, because it is it's kind of grotesque. It's not like, it's not traditional like Marvel DC comic art.
No.
But I think in a story like this, it serves its purpose better than something that doesn't look like this.
It has a slightly abstract style.
Yeah.
It's certainly not designed to be beautiful or attractive in some fashion, right? It's definitely something that is off-putting.
Yeah. And
so, yeah.
I don't know how much of that is intentional, how much of that is just his natural style that he then works.
Because I've seen his
stories.
natural style. It's definitely this. Like, this is not like...
He didn't make this book this style.
Right.
Like, this is just how he draws.
It's not dressed up to be anything. So, yeah, you hit on a couple of things that I wanted to definitely talk about, which is, number one, the sort of like twofold elements here genre-wise for me. It's like realism, and then this whole other like psychedelic layer, right? Where like what is real and what is sort of like going on in his mind, and the reality shifts kind of going on here, I'm really enjoying. And I think that's the element that is going to be the most interesting for me to, as the reader, especially this first time through.
Yeah. Not to jump too far ahead in the show, but it's a lot of the same themes in Primordial.
Definitely.
What's the book called?
Primordial?
Anyway.
Primordial.
Yeah. Primordial. Yes, that's how you say it. Of that like realism. I mean, that Primordial is much more fantastical than this, at least so far. Mm-hmm. But it's that idea of someone going through this realistic world with these moments of kind of psychedelic. So
totally.
But I think like it's handled much more subtly and much more, like, I would say realistically in this, because most of the moments where you get those kind of breaks is he might be asleep. Like it hasn't really like actually bled into the real world.
No. And so, yeah, I like that mix. I like that realism, but also with like, I don't want to call it fantasy, but like that, for lack of a better word, the like surrealistic, I guess, elements where he is in his head. He's clear. He's so consumed by his grief and the hollow existence that he's living that it's like connecting real versus in his head, that, he can't make a distinction,
Right.
And that's powerful storytelling when it's all driven from a place of loss.
Right. And that is kind of, I think, I'm guessing is going to be kind of a question that they start to tackle through this series is this him really finding his daughter that is somehow trapped in between worlds, or is it him just completely having a mental collapse and not being able to handle the death of his daughter even after all these years?
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, I I don't think this is a fantasy story where we're going to get like all of a sudden he's able to save his daughter. It seems like it's more about him either succumbing to his grief or overcoming his grief, and that's the process that he's going through. And I'm not sure. I would hope that it's not a fantasy, but that it's rather just looking at the difficulty in dealing with grief, and whether he fails or succeeds. I'm assuming that's kind of. I feel like that's the real interesting story that's being told here.
Yeah.
And again, great covers. People have mentioned some artwork but they're talking about Primordial. But I love that we get Lemire covers, and we even get Nguyen covers for this series. So cool. I love it.
And I mean, I think that Dustin Nguyen is generally a much better artist, but I think, again, to me, those Jeff Lemire covers connect a lot more to the story for me than not.
Absolutely.
He also does these interesting things.
Sure, let me blow it up here.
Where I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it on this page, but yeah, see that little almost like a little thing going off the page where it's following.
Like the entrance to a maze.
Yeah, so like the whole book is kind of like connected in weird ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose this page in particular because on this side, there's 6 panels, and you would read them typically left, right, left, right.
Yeah.
But the panels on the left are, or I guess on the
on the left, they're connected.
They're like that should be one big panel, but it's not. So you read them kind of back and forth, and I'm sure that was intentional for a purpose. And I thought he was going to do more of that, where it's kind of like a repetition, almost showing that like this is happening more than once.
Right.
So just little things like that I found very interesting about.
Yeah, I wore this, Nicholas, because I was going to go on a friend's show, and turns out I didn't have a shot. So I don't like the shirt as much as I used to, but whatever. It is what it is. So do you know how many issues the miniseries is going to be for May's book?
I don't know anything anymore.
Okay. So I mean, I'm definitely in for the whole series.
Back in the day, used to have on the covers it would say one of whatever, and I feel like publishers have stopped doing that because of a couple of reasons. Number one, they don't want you to know that it's a miniseries because people buy miniseries less. And number two, things like Wind just get turned into an ongoing because it gets popular.
They change their mind, right? Yeah.
And you don't want to have something like the Punisher miniseries, which it says 1 of 4 and then 1 of 5 all of a sudden.
That's collector's editions because of the mistake.
So I don't know, but...
So how would you score this one out of 10 then? These 2 issues that we got.
So far, it's like a solid 9. I really liked it a lot.
That's exactly where I am. I totally agree. So yeah, awesome.
Really great.
So there you go. May's book, issues 1 and 2, and I'm sure issue 3 has got to be around the corner here soon because I feel like I haven't read one in a little while. And we got another writer to talk about. That's Jeff Lemire. Jeffrey Lemire.
I think I've heard of that guy. Bill Lemire.
Bill Lemire himself also did this image title, Primordial, art by Andrea Sorrentino. Another great. This is a Nguyen variant. I feel like another Nguyen cover.
It's almost like those guys are buddies and work together a lot.
I don't know. I will really struggle to explain the plot of Primordial, and
I can try.
I would love to hear this.
So Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen have a new book coming out this week too.
Hey, Magic Lasso.
What's up, man?
Good to see you. I hear you were on a show with. You got into the club. You got into the club.
I wasn't even invited to the club.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, they have a new DC book called Robin and Batman, which I believe is only 3 issues.
Is that this week or next week?
I think it's this week.
Okay. I had to buy a damn Batman.
Like I said, Jeff Lemire is writing every book now.
He is.
So the plot of this book is that it takes place in the late 50s, early 60s, where the
space race.
U.S. government has decided to stop the space race because the primates they sent up into orbit, there was some problem and they didn't survive it. And so they hire this guy who was part of the space program to come into Cape Canaveral and kind of take an inventory of all the equipment there to see what they can salvage for the Defense Department before they scrap everything. He thinks he's coming in to restart the space program and is very disappointed when that's not the case. He then conveniently finds these readouts of the heart rate monitors of these primates, which shows them still reading a heartbeat after they were pronounced dead officially. He brings this to his superior, who gets mad at him and kind of hangs up. And then the next day when he goes back to continue his work at this Cape Canaveral, he is not let back in. He goes out to his car where there's possibly a KGB agent waiting for him, who gives him an address in Germany to go talk to somebody who knows more about this. He goes and I have to kind of take a detour here for a second.
I was going to say, because this is where it goes.
We find out in between all of this that these, both these apes and the dog that the Soviets sent up, who also didn't die, as reported, have entered some sort of black hole or other dimension where they are residing in this white room and they can kind of communicate telepathically, possibly.
Yeah.
So anyway, the second issue ends with this main character meeting the person that he was sent to meet, who was the trainer of the dog that is now missing in
time and space.
Metaspace, yes.
Yeah.
So how did I do?
Way better than I would have. And I'm glad to feel like I got as much, at least, as what you got out of that. I will also say I understood issue 1 and I felt like I was with it. And then I read issue 2 and I was like, well, what the heck? Like I got it. And then you did this to me. And now I feel like I didn't understand any of it.
I think it's very intentionally confusing.
The second issue.
Or both.
Series would you say
general.
both?
The series.
Because I felt strongly that issue 1 made some sense to me, and issue 2 was just like balls to the walls. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, it's kind of wacky, but you know, we're following the main character, and in that we are also following his confusion about what's happening. So you get things like this, which is just the title page, which is so cool.
Sorry, I'll blow
up. But more importantly, let me find a page where we actually are dealing with the main character instead of the dog.
I was going to say, the second issue is a ton about the dog.
Yeah. Which honestly, like, I don't know what it says about me, but I was way more invested in the dog story than this guy's story. Oh, here you go. So he's like in this trunk of this car in Germany going along, and then he starts feeling sick, and we get this page, which is just like, what is happening there?
Yeah, right.
So obviously, like, there's some sort of extraterrestrial force that is affecting both the situation in space and this character's mental state or his perception of reality or something.
It's Colonel Weird. That's what I'm thinking we're building towards. Is it all going to end and it's Colonel Weird?
Sure.
That's a Black Hammer joke for those Lemire fans. That's written by Fred Lemire.
Fred Lemire, right. It is his version of Donny Cates' crossover. It's into a Lemire verse.
That's what it's way better than the Millar verse.
Sorrentino does a great job, especially because like the artwork of the space room where these animals are is a completely different style than the real world. So it almost looks like a different artist, but
I would say there were several times when I was wondering if they had two artists working on this book.
Yeah,
that's how distinctly different several pages in back to back can be. It's jarring intentionally, and I really loved the art, and I really loved issue 1, but I got so frustrated reading issue 2 because I did it twice just to be like, is it me? What the heck is happening here? Like, it's kind of like they doubled down on the nonsensical, and it got a little bit too far for me, maybe.
Yeah.
What's up, Stevie B?
I mean, there were scenes in both of these, in both May's book and Primordial, where it made me feel on edge. Seeing
Absolutely
in May's book when because every night at 3:12 a.m. is when he gets this call from his theoretically a call from his daughter, and you see him just sitting there looking at his phone, waiting for the time, and it's cutting back between all these panels back and forth, and it just, that was.
He's definitely dabbling in anxiety.
Yeah.
In both May's book and Primordial.
Which is funny because, typically I read comics to avoid anxiety that I deal with every second of every day. But you know what? I've just decided to read comics about anxiety too. So it's just, or maybe the people I feel like I am contemporary with also are just dealing with crippling anxiety because that's just the way the world is.
I can't remember who I was listening to or talking to about movies as like, sure, they're escapist, but it's like a chance to enjoy something within a safe space.
Yeah, I think I said that.
And it was like, yeah, were you talking about like romantic comedies are a chance to like romance stories are a chance to enjoy relationship issues in a safe space. Horror movies are a chance to feel.
I said that on Reggie's show.
Yeah. So it stuck with me. And of course it would be something that you said. And I'm now quoting you on a show with you.
I mean, someone else very well could have said it. It's not a concept I came up with.
So then look, I'm glad that you're here for this then. That concept really stuck with me. That idea that like, within a safe space of the, the TV screen or the comic book, you can enjoy or at least interact with emotions and feel like if it's ever a problem, you can close the book or turn off the screen and move on. Right.
Right. It also allows you to, no one likes being scared in real life, right. But people pay to be scared going to see a horror movie because
Stephen King is a massive success and his fans want to be horrified.
It allows you to feel those feelings you typically want to avoid, but are still there because the world's a scary, anxiety-ridden place. And so you want to be able to get those feelings out in a way that feels safe. Yeah.
I remember on, I think it was Friends that, you get scared of the Shining, you can put it in the freezer. Just put it away for a little, you just put it off to the side. And in this case, I think playing with anxiety gives us the chance to like let Lemire run a little havoc on us and then walk away. And I will say issue 1 reminded me a ton. Primordial issue number 1 is what we're talking about for those just joining us. Reminded me a ton of Department of Truth. And there were elements of Department of Truth that were like hard to deal with, but at the same token, you could be done with it when the book was done and walk away.
But that was more content than
format or whatever. Yes. Yeah, totally.
I mean, same kind of idea at the end of the day, though. Except
so
it's
in this
more
case,
frustrating when it's something so directly related to something that you're frustrated with on a daily basis.
I gave when I read issue 1, I was like, this is a 9 out of 10. This is exciting new series. It's got a lot of great things to be playing with. And then I read issue 2 and I was like, this is a 7 out of 10. Like, I don't know what's going on here. So in the end, like I'm in an 8 out of 10 on the series as a whole.
I'm right around there, the same.
But I swung pretty dramatically from issue 1 to 2. So I don't even know what I'm going to get when I read issue 3. And I will definitely read issue 3 because I feel like there is a ton at work here that I want to know about.
The issues of May's book were a little longer, so the pacing of them had a little bit more room to breathe. But I think that was to its benefit because the pacing in May's book I think was exactly correct, where the pacing in Primordial was a little more up and down for me, where certain scenes felt like really slow and other scenes felt like I want more of this to kind of get where I'm going.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I found myself really interested in this story about this dog when, I mean, I guess that is what it's about, but it's also supposed to be about this guy trying to figure this stuff out. And I was like, I don't care about him in the trunk. Get me back to the dog.
Give me back to the dog and the monkey. I want to know what's going on with Leica and the monkey.
So yeah, I definitely enjoyed May's book more, but I mean, Primordial is still a solid book that is interesting, and I'm curious about where it's going, but it's it didn't grab me the same way. Even the first issue didn't grab me the same way as.
So there you go. Maybe I need to get some space, and I'll find that they're both 8s, and neither one was more. That the polarity might be a problem. Any last thoughts on Primordial? Are you going to get issue 3?
I mean, yeah, probably. I'm reading so little these days that I should probably just finish a darn miniseries instead of always saying, "Oh, just wait for the trade."
I was going to say,
if I'm being honest with myself, the last time I bought a trade was years ago.
Hey, you just got 2 or 3 of them in the mail recently.
Well, yes, but I also didn't buy those.
And you're going to have to send them to other people.
Those were thrust upon me by someone who doesn't remember things that I say on other people's shows.
I remembered exactly what you said. I just didn't remember
that you just said it. You heard it and said, "Oh, someone really smart must have said that." Couldn't have been Alec. That makes too much sense for him.
That's so accurate. Oh my gosh. All right, well, let's get into some DC comic books. We're not just doing a Jeff Lemire show. We also have Black Label Catwoman, Lonely City, drawn and written by the one and only Cliff Chiang, brother of Fred Chiang. I don't know. So what did you think about this? Large magazine size format, new Cliff Chiang Catwoman story.
I really dislike the Black Label format as far as size goes, because I have nowhere to store them.
Yeah.
But I mean, this book looks great, so I'm glad it was a little bit bigger to enjoy the beautiful artwork. So I don't know how I feel about that, but that's beside the point. That's just a complaint about publishing.
No, I mean, we had that discussion when we did Last Ronin, TMNT, and when we did Batwang.
Batman Damned, which, can't get enough space for that big Wang panel. This was probably my favorite Batman story in a long time.
Ooh.
They
killed him. Yay.
They killed him. Spoilers.
I mean, it's on the back cover.
Yeah, he's also dead from the beginning. It's not like he dies in this. I mean, he dies in the story, but it's a flashback because you already know he's dead.
Right.
But a lot of times the best Batman stories are light on Batman anyway, because
my thoughts exactly.
Batman is
a one-note character.
He's very interesting, but at the same time, like he's a bit of a dickbag.
He's a bag of dicks.
I'm
glad that you enjoyed this because I got a ton of fun out of it, and the whole time I was reading it, I was like, "This is Catwoman Last Ronin. Like this is basically what I wanted TMNT Last Ronin to feel more like. It has the same awful future, bad guys in power, one person can stop them." Hey, they've got all these old friends who've now a little bit older and they're going to have to try to help you solve. It felt like it's the same concept, better executed.
Yeah. Would you like to go over the plot this time?
Yeah, I can do the plot. So the idea of this one is there was a significant event in Gotham. Many of the heroes died. Batman, all the Robins, Alfred, a bunch of key heroes of Gotham died. Catwoman charged with the crime, sent to jail. And the city had to sort of be reborn with a new sort of political power at the forefront. And several villain heroish characters rose to the cause. People like Harvey Dent, the Penguin, have come into their own. And as the story sort of takes place a little bit, several years later in the future, Catwoman is getting out of jail for the crime that she committed of killing Bruce Wayne, who everybody knows is now Batman. And she has to sort of decide what she's going to do with her newfound freedom. In particular, she wants to figure out what the truth is behind what Bruce told her when he died, and how to exact some measure of revenge on the real culprit of Bruce's demise.
Yes.
Is that good enough?
Couple things that I feel like are of note. Number one, they do mention this pretty much only in passing, but that masks have been outlawed.
Mm-hmm.
So no more masked vigilantes are allowed. We don't really know where that came from. If that came from Harvey, who is, by the way, the mayor of Gotham.
Yeah, Harvey's the mayor. Chester Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, is like running the crime
casino.
Yeah, it's sort of the upper crust crime of the city.
But he's also he's a legitimate businessman.
Air quotes.
Which has kind of always been Penguin's deal, is that he is more of a white collar criminal, where he's more of the kind of gangstery type of. He doesn't get his hands dirty. He's the one who masterminds things.
Yeah, a white glove villain.
And there are these not robots, but mechanical suited bat police people.
Yeah,
who are
mech suited,
clearly corrupt. And Bruce Wayne, when he died, donated all of his money to the city. And there's a line which they say something like, I think Barbara says it, because Barbara Gordon is running against Harvey Dent for re-election for mayor. And she says something like, all those years of us punching bad guys in the face, and, it turns out that his money did more good for the city than any of that. So
that's a great moment.
Take
a lot of people
that.
criticized him for that in the comics. The idea that why isn't he using the money that he's got to better the city?
So take note of that, Elon Musk, and listen to the UN. I'm sure he's watching.
There's a lot of great comments about Batman going on here, but Gore says, I want to see a Bruce Wayne Playboy storyline where he travels around the world, makes love to beautiful women, solves crimes in Venice, and smiles from time to time.
Sounds like it's just James Bond.
James Bond, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there it is. Oh, brother. So James Bond.
And someone said something about how there being too many Bat books. I agree. That's above Gore's comment, I think.
There's several different ones. Stevie B says saturated the market.
I totally agree. I mean, the problem is DC doesn't have any idea what they're doing, and the only thing that sells for them is Batman, so they just say make more Batman books.
Well, and to Bearded Comic Bros' point, he always says but they sell. They continue to sell. So obviously it's working in the sense that they are continuing to make profit on these books.
Yeah.
My frustration is I feel like it narrows their scope, and before long it's going to push out all that other stuff, and they're not going to be producing it anymore. That logic feels like a slippery slope.
Yes.
To me.
And the other issue of it is that, I guess it's kind of like it's both a blessing and a curse, because you get a lot of just these watered down Batman stories that aren't necessarily any good. But at the same time, you get things like this that might not have come out if they weren't pushing so many Batman books. So,
or like we mentioned, the Lemire Batman that's coming out this week with Dustin Nguyen doing the art. There have been obviously highlights, but it's like if you throw 100 darts at a board, you're probably going to hit the board a few times.
Right.
So in that way, it's hard to say it's subjective, but what is the percentage of these that is worth the time to publish and read?
Yeah. I mean, clearly DC seems to be completely mismanaged from the top down. Starting from AT&T, whoever owns them now.
Time Warner,
yeah.
Somebody. Yeah, and this is Stevie B is exactly what I've been kind of saying all along. But that's my but I will happily say, from when I got back into collecting, like the few things that I really wanted them to make were more Green Lantern books and a Booster Gold, and I've got both, so I really shouldn't bitch too much because I've got the obscure side DC stuff actually in play a little bit.
Yeah, but no one else is going to be reading that Booster Gold book, and it's going to get canceled, and then they're not going to try again for 10 years. It's a
mini series anyway. I think it's only 10 or 12 issues anyway. So,
but
or 8.
I was more 8. I was honestly more interested in this as a Cliff Jang book than I was a Batman book. It just happens to be a great Batman book,
which is why I went after it, because I've read enough of his stuff to know that he knows what he's doing, and I enjoyed the Wonder Woman stuff he did with Brian Azzarello, and I was like, I want more of that. And to see him doing a large format Black Label and knowing it's only 3 issues, I was like, this sounds like something fun.
Yeah. And it's funny because things like, publishers can only go with the trends. They have to make the money the way they can. And it's funny because things like Deadpool and Harley Quinn, which seemingly are the most important popular characters to those franchises because of how well the properties do and how many fans they have. If you look at a convention, 9 out of 10 people are dressed up like Deadpool or Harley Quinn. But the last Deadpool series, I think, got canceled because no one was reading it. And same thing, like, I don't know anybody that reads Harley Quinn.
It's fair.
And even those people who dress up like the characters probably know them from, I'm not gatekeeping or anything here, because people are allowed to love comics any way they want to, as far as I'm concerned, but they know them from the movies and they probably read some trades or whatever, but I don't think most of those people are going in every month and buying them off the shelf on Wednesdays.
No. No, I think a lot of people who are Deadpool or Harley Quinn cosplayers are fans probably from animated series Batman, animated Harley Quinn, movies, and aren't necessarily reading those monthly.
Right. But
there's nothing wrong with watching it that way and dressing as those characters that way.
The more people exposed to these characters, the better it is for us, because the healthier the industry is as a whole. So I think it's great that they are finding these things however they can, and I don't have a problem with that. But my point is that comic fans who are buying books every Wednesday are buying Batman, and that's why there's so many Batman titles.
Chris Barrett is in the chat. What's up, Chris? Thank you, brother. We're talking about Catwoman, Lonely City, the Cliff Chang written and drawn Black Label title that's dropped 1 issue so far. I want to say that they're spaced a few months out, so like the next one might be in December. I don't think it's like month to month, but maybe I'm remembering wrong.
Yeah, I agree, Gore. I think even New 52 had some interesting stuff in it, and I think that Rebirth really was a turning point for DC in the wrong direction. But pre-New 52, I think DC was doing some really great stuff. Green Lantern was like probably the best book, best superhero book out for a long time.
Do you mean the Johns stuff?
Yeah. And they're just, when there's a new number 1 every 8 months of a title, like, I just can't care as much.
And I think that's been more of a Marvel thing than a DC thing, because I feel like they're always going back to number 1, on their series. Except versus DC tends to be doing these mini series. Like, it seems like it's, for at least from the outside, I feel like it's a ton of not non-continuity based stories. Like this Batman story doesn't connect to anything. It's just on the side over here, Reptilian or whatever. Like I'm going to give this writer a chance to just do a little mini series, and it doesn't connect to anything. It's just going to be its own thing.
And I think that's fine. And, DC's been doing Elseworlds books for a long time. You look
Truly.
at Gotham by Gaslight or Superman Red Sun. Like those are some of the best, examples. Or Long Halloween. These are some of the best stories of those characters in a long time. And, but, I think that you can have a main title that goes continuously and have these side stories from these miniseries that aren't necessarily like there's a new Venom #1 coming out. Like why? It's because there's a new creative team. Like
because
who
there's a new
Just
creative team. Exactly.
Keep the numbering going and say new creative team on it. Or even do that cheeky thing they tried for a while where they put a giant #1 on an issue that was like 37.
Which drove me crazy because then it was like the first appearance of Null is issue 3, but then the final issue of his run is issue 200. He didn't do 200 issues.
No, but that's another thing that really grinds my gears is when it services them, they use legacy numbering to sell you a double-sized issue.
Exactly.
Baloney.
No, I agree.
And they wonder why they're losing all their talent to self-publishing.
Well, obviously, a little bit of ownership on the other end too, to have the creator rights to a movie or a show versus, basically giving all those creative powers to the boss. So I'm definitely in for the next 2 issues of this. I felt like this is a solid 8.5 for me. I really just felt like it was a lot of fun and really what I wanted it to be, top to bottom. So
this was my favorite read of the month.
Whoa!
Yeah, as much as I loved May's book and like on a like a scholarly level, May's book is probably a more deep, interesting book.
Right.
But I just had more fun reading this. And obviously,
I totally agree.
Again, May's book, the topics and the themes are a lot heavier, but like this book felt to me like it didn't feel exactly like this, but it had kind of shades of like a grown-up animated series. Like the storytelling was that good. And to me, that's still, I've said this before, will always be the best Batman to me. And so that is high praise as far as I'm concerned, to compare it to that. It just it felt good. The characterization were great. The storyline was engaging and simple enough to follow, but complex enough to keep you turning the page. And the artwork is stunning. And so, yeah.
Some fun conversations.
9.4 near mint.
Ooh. Fun conversations about legacy numbering, Chris and Bearded having alternating perspectives. And I don't know where I fall on that discussion, but I agree with Alec that it's frustrating when it's always like Marvel's got another #1. Here's another #1. That does drive me up.
Well, I mean,
and Gore's got a list of really great reading here for anybody that's looking for some good stuff to read. Brubaker's runs on several different things. Jeff Johns' run on several things. Gail Simone,
2000s.
Bendis. So there's a ton of good stuff there. I agree with all of that.
To me, legacy numbering works better strictly because, like, if you look at something like Guardians of the Galaxy, right? And you're missing issue 12 from one of the runs. And you go to a comic shop that isn't very well organized, and you find an issue 12, and you say, oh, is this from the right series that I need, or is it from the one before or the one after?
And it might even be the same writer
or
the same artist, but it's going to be the wrong issue 12. We're finishing up this one. Coach Vic, thanks for joining us. We're just finishing up Catwoman Lonely City.
But if it is something that is just, if they just kept legacy numbering and I'm like, oh, this is issue 412, I know I need 412, you can just go look for that issue numerically. It's an absolute nightmare in organization. It makes your collection look sloppy, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe it's just because I am a little more OCD about that type of stuff. But
well, I mean, I get it.
But how nice is it to have 1 through 100 of something rather than 1 through 12, 1 through 8, 1 through 16, 1 through 12?
I think they're aware that some of that the sales numbers preach to the success of that strategy. It's just the reading and the long-term enjoyment doesn't. That's the
Right.
problem.
Yeah. It is. The only reason they do it is for marketing purposes, because they know more people will buy a number one. But we've talked about this before. More people might buy a number one, but that doesn't mean you're retaining any readers.
So and I know that there's also that element of like I can sell it in a trade more easily when it's like it's the whole story. There.
Yeah.
And it's numbered away.
I don't know.
Sorry. Do you want to?
I don't like it.
Yeah. There was one other book that I did not pull out of my short boxes here, but I know that you had mentioned that you wanted to maybe spend a second or two on.
I'll mention a couple other books that I read.
Oh, do it. I love it.
Righteous Thirst for Vengeance.
Image number 1.
Rick Remender. Andre Lima Rojo. I don't know.
So I really enjoyed this, and I wanted you to read it because I wanted to hear about your thoughts, because it felt right up your alley to me.
Yeah. There is nothing better than a good revenge story. Like it's just great. John Wick, Old Boy.
Anything Mel Gibson has ever made is a revenge story, right? Like all of it.
Taken. There's a really great Korean movie, I believe it's called The Man from Nowhere, which I'll double check that title. But it's a big theme in Asian cinema and Asian storytelling and stuff like that. But
yeah, I mean it is an iconic story device,
especially when the person who is enacting the revenge is seemingly harmless or soft-spoken, or doesn't want to have anything to do with it, and their hand is forced to be in this situation,
right?
And because we all suffer indignities, and we all hopefully not to the extent that the people in these movies do, but we all suffer these things where again it's the opposite of what we were talking about earlier about the horror films, where you see this horror film and you're allowed to be scared. You watch a revenge movie and you're like, yeah, you're allowed to like live out this moment of feeling like you got one over on somebody who you felt like wronged you.
Right.
Obviously, to a much more extreme situation than like just getting the last word in a conversation or whatever. But this book was it was good. Really interesting artwork. But it really is about this guy who gets thrown into a situation that is seemingly like we don't know much about him yet, but it's like way over his head.
Yeah.
And really not a lot happens in this first issue.
So I wanted to talk about this because I know we've talked a lot about overly too much exposition in comics, but we've also talked about not enough and not enough story. And this book got hit with that slam. This book got labeled not enough story. There's no story. This book has zero story. Like a ton of people hated this book or really just didn't like it because they felt like not enough story. How do you feel about it?
I think that it was told perfectly for what the story they're trying to tell is. Yeah, that's like how I felt. Basically nothing happens, but the point of it is that this guy just has this, like he's just trying to ride the bus to get to this destination. We don't really know why he's going there yet, but he's trying to catch this bus to this very fancy house where he, at the end of the issue, finds two people who are gruesomely murdered.
Which is like the entire plot. Guy slowly goes over to a house and finds two dead people.
Yes. But
that's the whole thing. But there's, in my opinion, so much more going on.
Yes, there's a lot going on, obviously very subtly. It is building to something that I think is going to be much greater than this story of this guy just riding a bus. There was nothing done by mistake in this book. It was all very intentional. He kind of is a bit of a pushover. He is, tries to be polite and help other people, and it was. I felt like it was very intentionally paced. Like it wasn't
absolutely
that, like Rick Remender is not a novice writer. Like this isn't his first time, and he missed the mark with how he wanted to tell the story. Like there's a reason why this first issue was slow, and I think the reason why people are so afraid to write stories like this is because of the reaction it gets. Is that, oh, this isn't about anything. I need to have 14 issues worth of content in one issue just to capture my attention for this story.
Well, and you know that there's editors sitting on the other end of those pages saying,
for sure, saying
there's just not enough meat here.
Like you can't have 2 pages of him staring at a puddle. It's like, no, I want 4 pages of him staring at a puddle. I'm doing 2 to acquiesce to your wants.
So now, I had a ton of questions reading it, and that's what I liked a lot about it, was that Remender left a lot of question marks for me, but there were questions that I felt like I'm happy that I don't know them yet. I'm happy that these are breadcrumbs now.
Yeah.
The thing with the bird and the killing of the bird by the bus stop, like I loved it.
Beautiful.
It was amazingly well done. So perfectly captured, and you're sympathetic, and you feel like this is clearly a metaphor for something bigger in this story, but I don't even understand the metaphor yet.
Right.
Like there's so many ways that metaphor could play out,
And how much worse would this book have been with a bunch of narration?
Oh my God, right? If he was like basically telling you his life story and we were in his head versus being outside of him, right? Only being able to observe what we can see with our eye. In that way, very much like a European film.
And to Gore's point, it says there's enough story in the artwork. I think that's exactly true, is that we get the point through the artwork. We don't need for him to, like, we can see him looking at the bird and we can see what he's thinking. You don't need to hear him thinking it.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, I'm a fan of well-narrated books and well-narrated movies, but I feel like it's really overused and used as a crutch nowadays.
I was going to use that word. Yeah, it's absolutely a crutch, and used when you're not sure if the audience is going to get it. And clearly, this is an example where people didn't get this, and I can understand that. But I was happy with where I came out on the other end for this, and it reminded me of both the graphic novel and the movie History of Violence, where it was like, I'm picking up the pieces as I go along. I'm behind several characters in this story, but I've got just enough to keep going. In fact, I kept thinking about the book and the movie History of Violence as this was going on, because it had that element of realism where just this feels authentic, but also where you have this sense of foreboding, like this could turn on a dime at any moment.
Right.
After that opening sequence in History of Violence, the film, I was like, I don't know where this is going, but I feel like there's danger around every curve and it feels real.
Yeah. And like, I get it. Like, this isn't a comic for everyone.
No.
But that's fine. Some people like Deceased.
I don't know who those people are.
Yeah, there's no accounting for taste, I guess.
Some people like Lost.
Yeah.
Patrick Wall asks, is the hero main character going back to his own house? I didn't think it was his house. He was visiting another house.
No, because he knocks on the door and asks for if he seems to be going there.
Yeah, he's on his way to get to this place. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the problem is that, like, because of the industry and because it's so volatile and there's so little room for profit, a book like this, that isn't for everyone, that isn't going to sell a ton of copies because it's more subtle and just a different style of storytelling that isn't going to appeal to everyone necessarily. Is it going to do well? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just, when you become someone like Rick Remender who has clout, you can say, I want to do the story. If you want to publish it, you can have it. If not, I'll go to someone else and they'll publish it.
And that stuff gets always labeled niche or what have you, but I think it's more about it being it's a harder sell, but it doesn't make it any less rewarding, right? It's a tougher sell. I get it, because it's not Batman on the cover or Spider-Man, but it can be perfectly rewarding. Just like there's people that won't read any independent comics, period. I think there's people within the independent comic community that be like, this is just too slow for me, or there's not enough meat on the bone here.
Yeah. And again, I don't care if someone doesn't like independent comics. Like, everyone has their own tastes. That's fine.
Totally.
Just don't read it. Like, if it's not for you, don't read it. Like, I didn't keep reading Deceased because I thought it was hot garbage. Speaking of,
but you also, I think, have to read it with a different mindset. I don't go into watching a romantic comedy movie the same way I would go into watching The Godfather, or the way I'd go into, I think you go into a book like the Righteous Thirst for Violence or Vengeance, sorry, with a different mindset as to what you're expecting to get out of it than you would reading Catwoman Lonely City. It's a great cover.
It's a great cover, and I had high hopes for this book because I liked the creative team. But this was just DC's 2.0. It was just total drivel garbage. The only thing that I'll say this was a bit more redeeming than Deceased was this had humor in it, which I think Deceased could have really used. But otherwise, this was just why? There's no point to this. This is this type of book where it's let's put Batman on the cover and just sell books, because this does nothing.
Architectural, I'm sorry you missed it. We're just doing our recap of the month of October books, and we did talk about Lonely City just a little bit ago. We've been doing a little bit of Jeff Lemire love at the beginning of the show, little Cliff Chang a minute ago, and now we're finishing with a little discussion of the Image comic from Rick Remender, Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, and then of course highlighting some other books.
For those of you who don't know what this is, it's a DC versus vampires. Don't buy it.
But so as far as Righteous Thirst, I think did we give grades on that one?
No.
I think I had that one issue 1 somewhere in that 8.5 range. I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely getting another issue.
Yeah, I think we're right in line, which is unusual for us.
Yeah,
I think 8.5 is right where I'd put it too for this first issue.
Nice,
super enjoyable, but didn't give me, despite all of our praise for it not giving us enough, didn't give me enough for it to put it in that 9 range yet. But if issue 2 or 3 builds on what they're doing and it becomes more fleshed out as to what they're
taking shots at No Good Comics. He's still got 10 people on his show right now. It's still packed for 3 hours. I'm going to get in. When we're done here, I'm going right back into his chat and
to go bust more balls.
Making more shenanigans.
Yeah.
Any other books from the month that you want to highlight, or books that highs and lows?
The only other thing that I read that I really had any thoughts of was Soul Plumber.
Soul Plumber. How did I miss this book? What's the publisher?
I even mentioned it to you. It's a DC book.
Oh, you know what? I went into my shop and asked about it, and they're like, we're sold out.
Yeah,
we don't have it.
It was written by the guys who do this podcast called Last Podcast on the Left. And it was clearly written by them, for better or worse. It was amusing. It's basically a story about this guy who invented this machine that pulls demons out of people who have been possessed, but it's all hokum. They really directly reference stuff that Jim Jones did towards the beginning of his career, with pulling cancer out of people. That he did a whole show of that during his sermons, where he would he would have plants in the audience, and he'd pull raw chicken meat out of people and say that
Oh, yeah.
And so that's basically what this guy's doing. And the main character, connects with this preacher because this main character is like this hyper religious person, but he can't really find his way. And he connects with this person, and he thinks like, oh, I found this. I want to be this soul plumber who can like help exorcise these demons. But the guy who's doing these exorcisms is just looking. It's like a pyramid scheme, and he's trying to like get people to pay to be exorcists, basically. But this guy can't afford it, so he steals the blueprints and builds his own soul plumber machine, but actually builds one that works. So at the end of the first issue, he like actually pulls a demon out of somebody.
Huh. And this is in the DC universe? This feels very Constantine-esque.
So it is not... it's not connected to anything in the universe. Like there's no DC characters, but it's not... I don't think it's a Black Label book or anything. I think it's just...
I tried Rain Like Hammers.
It's a DC horror book. So,
and I just couldn't appreciate it in the single issue that I read, issue number 1. It did not do much for me. I tried. Okay, so again, it was called Soul Plumber.
Soul Plumber.
And they only dropped 1 issue?
Yeah, only the first one's been out so far.
Nice.
I have the variant. I don't have the regular cover.
Let me blow that up. So it's the same. What's the creator's name?
They do a podcast called Last Podcast on the Left. It's Marcus Parks, Henry Zabrowski, and Ben Kissler are the writers.
Okay. I think the best thing I've probably read this month is I'm still loving Not All Robots. I think it's just freaking hilarious and dark and twisted and fun. So that's probably been something I'll continue to discuss. And at some point when it's all done, I'll have to recap the whole thing because it's just that good. And then eventually you and I are going to have to get into Gideon Falls.
Yeah, because someone just decided to send me a bunch of trades of it to read.
It's kind of how I got them. I mean, let's be honest. I didn't buy those, but I do have the hardcover now, so I can
there you go.
Take my time.
So you passed off your crummy old copies to me.
Hey. That's how I work. So if you don't know Alec Whitewell Comics, the link to his channel is down below. And at the end of this month, in early December, we'll look back at November's books on his channel and talk a little bit about some of our favorite reads from November. I know that we've been doing D&D together every Sunday. That just wrapped up. If you haven't seen it on Big Will's channel. Anything else going on? I know you were on Reggie Collect's channel not too long ago.
Yeah, he invited me on against his better judgment, probably.
But
it was only like 10 minutes of one show, so I'm sure he felt okay that the rest of the show would carry my weight. But yeah, I mean, I've been kind of toying with the idea of doing some videos again, but I haven't had the time or energy to yet. But otherwise, yeah. We're going to do hopefully at least a one-shot D&D thing on my channel coming up next month. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, once every other month on my channel, we got book club. Otherwise, it's a total dead space.
Yep. That's definitely been the case where you and I both far less content these days.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is just like feel like I'm just repeating myself with a lot of stuff I say nowadays where like I've said what I need to say about comics.
The state of current comics.
So people just don't want to hear me complain about the same things all the time.
Hey, I think we were very congratulatory to very approving.
Yeah, but I still
today.
Dumped on some stuff.
I mean, it wouldn't be yes.
Yeah, right. I mean
as for me, tomorrow I'm hosting tomorrow I'm hosting Omni X-Men, and we're talking about issue 137. Yikes! There we go. Of the Claremont run, we're gonna find out if this comic is worth $2,500 to you. All these years later.
I mean, I guess that's personal preference, right?
I mean, it's the state of the current.
I was going to say the way the market's going, it could be by tomorrow.
Right. This is Whitewell Comics Journey. You got to click the link down below. Go check out his channel. Alec and
Goth
I do
guy.
this once a month. I mean, maybe am I the goth guy?
I mean,
Am
either
I the
one.
Am I the drama? Am I the problem here? Probably me. So yeah, tomorrow night, do a new comic book day book club. It sounds like we might even follow it up over on JP's channel, talking about the final volume of Ascender, which was beautiful and great, and I'm excited to discuss that. So that's kind of what's happening right now with me, and I'm gonna go over to No Good Comics chat here in a second and do some shenanigans. So that's where you can find me. Everybody, have a great night, have a great week, and we'll see you back here next month.
I am going to be on The Hunt later this month on Tony Standard's channel.
Oh,
towards the end of the month. So
the return of the Underwhaler.
Maybe.
Woo! I hope you get your own show with Justin tomorrow, John. Hope I can get in there. Maybe one day.
But by the time he's done, hopefully.
Right. Exactly. All right, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you back next month on History.
Bye.
Bye.